Well, the air is brisk, the wind cuts through any exposed skin that you have. Puddles that are hanging about are starting to freeze, and well, in other places there's snow. It doesn't seem like any showing up around here. Winter is here. But more to the point of our story, two common themes in the comment section of last week's Tinker Tuesday upload. The one where Brent and I recycled and rebuilt his commuter wheel. Number one being a general consensus of despair for aspiring new wheel builders. And the second being, well, this camera's not right for this. That's pretty good. And two, what is this? And based on those two themes, today's video will be dedicated in its entirety to getting started in wheel building. Easiest thing to knock out of the way right now, this is a tax exact, I'm going to call it a portable truing stand. If I'm being completely honest, this is not the truing stand that I would ever recommend. This was given to me from a friend. I would not pay for this. If I had it my way, I'd order something a little more proper. But this being a temporary fix has somewhat become a more permanent one. I know a few of you are probably a little bit hung up on this. This seems like it would be like a really cheap, great way to get into wheel building, but the truth is, right now on Amazon, it's selling for 119 Canadian dollars. Whereas a more traditional, like entry-level truing stand is somewhere around $140 to $160, and they are far superior. The only thing this has going for it is its small packaging and the fact that you could like take it apart and hide it away really easily, which I never do. I just always leave it here. So yeah, if you're thinking that this is gonna be like the budget workaround for getting a real truing stand and getting into wheel building, it's really not. That is a nice feature. I'll link below to some of the truing stands that I would actually consider buying. Now when it comes to actually starting your first wheel build, well, I can understand the apprehension. Because honestly, when you do look at a wheel and you try and understand how it's laced without ever having done it, it becomes a little bit overwhelming fairly quickly. Hard to fault anyone for not knowing exactly how this works without some sort of education on it. Also, no real help that any research you decide to do just kind of exacerbates the problem. Effective rim diameter, flange diameter, hub width, radial length, cross 1, cross 2, cross 3, cross 4, spoke length calculation, rolled threads, cut threads, spoke prep, first spoke, inbound spoke, valve differing spoke pattern, equal tension, stress relief, spoke lateral, radial truing, dishing. Yeah, it's a lot. But here's the thing, guys like Zach Smiley and Sheldon Brown and hell, Jobs Brandt, I mean, he wrote the book. I mean, he literally wrote the book on the bicycle wheel. They're all masters of the trade, which means they have an insane amount of knowledge that they have to get down onto, well, paper, I guess, if they do decide to write an article about the subject, which in turn becomes a lot to digest when you're just trying to get into it. The string light probably looks better with no glasses on. Because let's face it, there's no course, there's no like school for learning any of this stuff. There's no curriculum, there's no like individual small steps to get you built up. A lot to do in part because there's no money to be made in bicycle mechanics. But imagine if you could enroll into a course that like breaks it down into simpler steps, kind of like what an entire math curriculum does. You don't jump into grade 1 doing calculus right away, you learn your additions and subtraction and multiplication and division. Next thing you know, you're doing more than arithmetic, you're doing algebra. And then you get to graduate into pre-calculus, and then you're doing calculus. Next thing you know, you don't want to be in university anymore, so you quit to become a YouTuber. Okay, that got a little too real there for a second. Essentially what you're doing when you're reading books like this or articles by the masters of wheel building, you're reading the calculus level of bike mechanics. And I don't know about you, but without a solid foundation of math, I'm not at all interested in reading any calculus books. I'm also just not interested at all in reading calculus books in general. It's very easy to believe that you're not going to be able to succeed in building a wheel because there's just too much information to consider. But just keep in mind, there was a time that I had no idea what I was doing, and I just kind of had to start with like the small little things that I knew I could control and move up from there. you can't expect to be an expert when you're first starting out. You just kind of have to build upon the things that you learn as you go. That's why I find sometimes almost with everything, it sucks to learn from somebody who already knows everything. I think probably the best analogy that I could probably come up with is like learning a new trick while riding BMX. When I was first learning how to do bar spins, the advice was always hop as you become leveled out in the air, then throw the bars, catch them, and land with 2 wheels. Which is not untrue, but I was not good enough at actually throwing the bars around and catching them well enough that I couldn't even think about when the bike was leveling out to even consider throwing them at the right time. So it took a lot of trial and error of actually just kind of going off of jumps, not really paying attention to where I was, and just throwing the bars around and hoping that I would catch them. I had to get that part down pat before I could even think about going up something and having full control over what was going on. And after a while, when the muscle memory kept building up and I could catch them as they were coming around, I went to go do a hot bar spin and it just kind of came to me. But I wasn't able to get there until I fumbled through and made enough mistakes at the beginnings of learning how to do a bar spin than I ever could doing them over everything. It takes a lot of patience to learn something new on your own, but it's not undoable. So here's my recommendation for those of you who are interested in getting into wheel building. Try and find some sort of old front wheel. A front wheel is going to make your life a lot easier. The flange sizes are the same. The distance between the center to the left side of the flange and the right flange, it's the same, which results in the same length spokes. Therefore, you can't mix them up. Everything's going to be easy. Nothing to consider there. That takes all the measurement, the spoke calculation, all of that completely out of the equation. Pardon the pun. And then what I would do is just take your time slowly deconstructing the entire thing. Try not to lose any nipples and pull the spokes out of the hub. Next up, follow the wheel lacing guide from any wheel build article on the internet. More importantly, if there's any part of the lacing portion of the article that you don't understand, keep picking away at it anyway. Honestly, I think it's worth making the mistake a couple times so that you know what mistake you're trying to avoid when you're initially setting up the lacing than it ever is to get it right all the time and then try building wheel later and not really understanding what happened. If you can't tell, I'm big on learning from mistakes because that's how I learn everything. Once you have the wheel laced to a point that you're happy with, put it in the fork of a bike and just start adding tension. Getting the lacing right to the point that it's second nature for putting the wheel together, and then getting comfortable building up tension slowly as you go around and giving yourself a very good lesson in patience are the 2 important things that I'd like to see someone who's just starting start to kind of develop. And then in the end, if you feel fairly satisfied with what you've put together, throw a tire on it and take it for a ride. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at how strong wheels are no matter what, how well they stay together even if you didn't put enough tension in it, and how cool it feels to ride something that you've just put together yourself.